Have you ever woken up wondering why mom didn't just swallow? Maybe it's just me. So today I'd like to discuss a topic that I'm sure the great daddy Wendy wouldn't favor me over, but trust that I'll do my best to keep it PG as to not harass or attack Zane, the guy in question. Forever in my heart, Isaiah. I don't know why I said that, he's not dead. Anyways, as most of you may know, having clicked on the video, Wendigoon was the center of drama surrounding his lifestyle and upbringing, I guess, courtesy of YouTuber Zane, known best as In Praise of Shadows. Zane covers a wide range of topics, most if not all surrounding horror films, in which he compares them to artist expression that represents real-world topics. The whole thing kind of reminds me of that clip of Kelly Clarkson interviewing Dave Grohl.
That soaring feeling, like that whole thing, I get like visually, I always love your lyrics too, because it's like you paint such a great visual for me, and I love that.
I don't want to burst your bubble.
Okay, I'm gonna drink my tea. You're like, so this was about...
At the time, I wanted to become a pilot. I wanted to learn to fly.
In a deleted, recent, and recently deleted video, Zane decided to make Wendigoon the central focus for over 35 minutes of the video to conclude that
he should not be welcomed in our spaces, or even, just in public in general.
And if you don't already know, you're about to learn why this took over half an hour of my already poorly degrading life to explain. He begins Wendigoon's segment by stating that wealthy people, especially younger wealthy people, have a disjointed or obscured view of what it's like to grow up impoverished. Or maybe that's how he should have said it. Regardless, it doesn't matter because he uses Wendigoon's take on Blood Meridian, a novel written by Cormac McCarthy in 1985, as an example. For anyone not familiar with the book or Wendigoon's video, it has very little to do with growing up poor and more to do with nihilism, the Glanton Gang, and a teenager, referred to as the Kid, that essentially acts as a stand-in for a POV shot of every other character in the story. This is beyond reaching, as you'll see with most of his points. I can understand if Wendigoon spent the first hour of his video explaining the intricacies of what it must be like for this boy growing up the way he did, or how that would lead him to one of the most dangerous gangs of early American history, but that just doesn't happen. Not once. He doesn't even bring up poverty. I would know. I rewatched this video for the 8th time, just to be sure. Now, I for one am certainly not scholarly. Reading has never been an integral part of my life, so I really don't have a leg to stand on here. But I would assume that anyone truly passionate about a particular book, or reading in general, would gain enlightenment and perspective from hearing someone else's interpretation of a particular piece of literature, regardless of their background. Actually, even more so from different backgrounds who may interpret the text differently. All that in saying that Wendigoon coming from a different background would benefit what you take away from the work as opposed to what he took away. But you'll see that throughout Zane's video, he seems disinterested in learning, understanding, or reasoning, and in his mind, his interpretation is not based on opinion, but fact. Speaking of facts, I've got another one for you. I actually couldn't think of anything in time, and now I look stupid. Oh wait, peeing on the toilet seat in front of your partner expresses dominance. But what I'm really trying to say is that I'm looking to reach my goal of 1,000 subs by 2025, so if you're enjoying my nonsense, consider subscribing. Next, he connects Wendigoon's original username Bugaloo Boy to the far-right extremist group Bugaloo Boys. This is probably the strongest case he's going to make in the entire video, but only if you're unfamiliar with this group, Wendigoon's past, or you're willing to take what he said at face value, and that's saying a lot because the lines he draws are still incredibly stretched, but not as completely laughable as some of the random and hypocritical connections or outright lies he creates to make his points. He cites Wendigoon's post regarding his relationship to the alt-right group, wherein Wendigoon claims that he was one of the first to use the term boogaloo. Wendigoon goes on to state that the group began taking heavy political stances, and that this is when he decided to distance himself from the group by changing his name and making different content. But this is all besides the point, because the only useful information that Zane presents is the Center of Strategic and International Studies, stating that the term boogaloo began on hate forums similar to 4chan. His words, not mine. Around 2010 to 2012, well before Wendigoon would have claimed he started it. The problem is that Wendigoon never claimed he started it. Wendigoon claims that he is one of the first, which could be in reference to the group, his social circle, or any other rationality you can come up with. In my opinion, though, I think it is incredibly telling of an individual who hears another misspeak and assumes lies before they assume misunderstanding or ignorance, or maybe just not assuming at all and instead questioning. Wendigoon never said that he was the first Boogaloo Boy, and even if he would have, it's clear from your research that he was wrong. Even if all of this could be taken as fact, is it not part of human nature to be flawed or wrong? Are we not allowed to make mistakes or misjudge the same way that you've used bare minimum research to make a nearly 4-hour hit piece to attack conservative values and people, specifically Isaiah, who may or may not support those values without ever meeting the guy? It's clear that whatever ties Wendigoon did or didn't have to this group, he has completely shifted his course, and the only references that are made to him and this group are the posts and videos like this one, made to slander someone's character. Now, unlike Zane, I will refrain from assuming why he does this sort of thing. The only other reference made on Zane's part is about Wendigoon wearing a Hawaiian shirt, as do the Boogaloo Boys. Should we look into Hawaii to see what affiliations they have with this group? So we've reached the point in the video where Zane begins connecting Wendigoon's friend group, consisting of anyone from close friends of Isaiah's to people he's interacted with in his videos or on Twitter to gun-toting, alt-right, fascist, conservative hate-mongers. Now, I don't want to spend too long on this subject, as I'm not familiar with all of these YouTubers, and they've made much better defenses of their own characters in their own videos. In fact, in doing research for this video, I watched Brandon Buckingham's response to being accused of being a gun YouTuber that has been accused of threatening, and in doing so, I subscribed immediately. So thank you, Zane, for sharing more inspiring and hilarious content to binge. The accusations are entirely baseless, but don't take it from me. Zane admitted this in a Twitter thread, making it incredibly clear that he isn't willing to do the research. This, for anyone who hasn't had the chance to let that settle in, that means Zane has willingly made a hit piece in attempts to demoralize another human being based entirely on an image alone without any attempt or desire to learn more about the individual. What that could say for the entirety of his Wendigoon segment, the video in general, or his channel as a whole, is a lot. For anyone on the side of Zane, or giving him the benefit of the doubt at least, would undoubtedly call into question his moral standing if he's willing to judge an individual's actions based solely on appearance, which leads you to question what type of person he really is. How would you feel being approached or approaching an individual that is willing to judge the type of person you are or what you believe in based solely on how you look or the company you keep? You know, Jesus also had friends, and in the end, one of them chose to betray him. And do you know who that betrayer was? His name was Brandon Buckingham. I'm just kidding. Zane attacks Brandon for a singular video about guns that he made with another creator. Turkey Tom for being a degenerate at the age of 14, like we haven't all been shitty teenagers at one point. Shoe on Head because of Twitter posts taken out of context. Oompaville for making content with overweight and unhealthy creators and making fun of Andrew Tate. And Donut Operator for making content surrounding law enforcement. I realize these are very vague and lazy generalizations of what all he says, but it's truly what it all boils down to. It's the backbone of his argument, and I don't want to trudge through the already muddy water of the debunked accusations he makes about these individuals, and would only go towards spreading more hate towards him. The one thing I took notice of is how he refers to every one of these creators who own a gun or have been seen in a picture or video with a gun as gun crazed. If you think owning or holding a weapon makes you gun crazed, then what would you call David Koresh? Because to compare these two in any way would be absolutely insane in my opinion. This is the equivalent of saying that everyone who has ever worn a Hawaiian shirt, even ironically, is a Boogaloo Boy obsessed alt-right anarchist, and that just doesn't really seem fair, does it, Zane? He briefly mentions a time when Wendigoon used promotional art that someone else created as an act of conservative propaganda, maybe? What the hell does this have to do with your point exactly, Zane? You mentioned being able to discuss this in more detail, but don't even grant us the courtesy of telling us what this has to do with conservative films and horror. Now we move on to Wendigoon's name. He explains that the word Wendigo is sacred to the Algonquin people and should never be spoken out loud or written down. Now, I hate to simplify my argument in such a way, but isn't Wendigo and Wendigoon two completely different words? This entire argument is based around Isaiah's cultural background and Zane here being the authority on what is acceptable to use as a white individual, referring to other cultures. Well, if Ginny Travers or BNN expects me to stop using my name or mascot, they can go fuck themselves. This is hands down the most absurd argument that, if you're still hanging on by a thread to the point Zayn has proposed, will almost undoubtedly make you fall off the wagon. Imagine someone from one race telling another race what they are and aren't allowed or shouldn't be allowed to say or do, and then having the audacity to call others racist. Well, I guess he would know, wouldn't he? He uses some hand-picked comments from different accounts questioning Isaiah's use of the name Wendigoon, and I guess cites that as grounds for his argument. Then, in an audacious move, he chooses to generalize any and every white person inside of the Appalachian region as racist unless then proven otherwise. He also remarks that himself and Isaiah are practically neighbors, and Zayn himself lives within the Appalachian region. So I guess it's fair to assume that he is racist unless he proves otherwise. And unless you consider gatekeeping for another race, generalizing a region of people based on race, or assuming the type of individual that someone is based on appearance is considered proving otherwise, I can only be led to believe that it's okay to assume Zayn is racist. Now, I know that none of this is my fight. I may be a fan of Wendigoons, but that certainly doesn't give me any right to discuss any of these matters. It's not as though I was called out for any of Zayn's wild ramblings. Or was I? Because similar to Wendigoon and Zayn being practically neighbors, I also closely neighbor Zayn, and I also happen to live and was mostly raised in the Appalachian region. I find it unfathomable to assume an entire race to be racist based solely on your upbringing or close ties to the region, especially when you can only be sure that you're familiar with one part of that incredibly large region. It would be like assuming everyone who wears a frayed jacket is a hipster douche that loves the smell of his own farts and incapable of understanding reason. Throughout the video, the message he seems to want to convey is that conservative horror films should not be welcome in the horror genre. Essentially, he somehow thinks that battling bigotry, racism, sexism, homophobia, and hate is to ostracize half of the country from something he has no rights to, other than he loves horror. Zayn here is so limp-wristed and afraid of confrontation that he would rather everyone that doesn't share his ideologies shouldn't be allowed to leave the house or access the internet. You guys remember segregation and how fantastic that was? Zayn here wants to do it again, but on a much more extreme level because his opinions are superior to anyone's who opposes his. I'm almost willing to consider this entire thing to be satire. It sits so far leaning and baseless that it feels like he's memeing a handful of left-wing liberals who may not entirely understand what they're standing for. I myself am not a liberal, nor a conservative. I take no stance one way or the other when it comes to politics, and I have the same feelings when it comes to religion as well. I am, however, someone who grew up lower middle class and have several years experience outside of my parents' home, enough for Zayn to take my opinions and interpretations of a nearly 40-year-old book to heart, and I thought, yeah, it was alright. Speaking personally to the audience though, I would recommend not showing this guy any more hate or bullying. Not just because it's wrong or because Daddy Wendy Poo says so, but because from his actions, he doesn't seem like the type of individual who accepts criticism or uses it to better oneself, and he seems more interested in playing the victim. I don't think anyone's going to get through to him, and he's not willing to accept his wrongdoing and instead double down on every accusation he made. Attacking him will only validate his victim card, and we're better than that. I just wanted to go through some of the criticisms he makes and defend an amazing YouTuber who has only ever shown love and kindness to everyone, and defend my region and the wonderful people who have helped raise me and make me the person I am today, which I think is mostly good. But I am white, so maybe I'm racist. Who knows? I've rambled for way too long though. If you did stick around, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. I really enjoy responding to you guys. Leave a like and share the video if you did enjoy, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. I do hope the editor has a field day with this one, but I'm sorry for the length. A big shout out to him and my channel artist. Links will be in the description. But until next time, be well.